Hello, fourth graders! All right, here we are. We're getting ready to read chapter 9 and into chapter 10. So they are on the flat bottom boat on their way to Sacramento. Oh. Okay. Stuff and nonsense. Praiseworthy smiled, shaving himself at the cabin mirror. The steward tells me they're Indians. These Indians are quite tame. They like to dig for roots and acorns and are a menace to nothing but wasps and grasshoppers, which they consider a delicacy. With one sandbar and another, it was 2 days before Sacramento City came into view. A shore cannon went off, raising a cloud of dust to announce the arrival of the boat. Townspeople flocked to the river. Praiseworthy and Jack carried their picks and shovels, gold pans and carpet bags through the crowd. It was the end of June, and the valley shimmered with heat. Wooden awnings stretched over the store fronts like eye shades. As they walked along, Jack kept gazing at the mountains, the great Sierra Nevadas. They stood dark blue and purple against the hot morning sky. That must be where the gold was, Jack thought, and fresh hope shot through him. They were almost there, weren't they? A stage was leaving for the mines at 2 o'clock. To raise their fare, the butler and the boy had no choice but to sell off a pick and shovel. Mining tools were in great demand, and prices were astonishing. The pick and shovel brought $100 each. So there's two of them, $100 each. After paying their stage fare, Praiseworthy poured the gold dust left over into the tips of all 5 fingers of his left glove. He had difficulty getting his hand in, but he made it. His left hand felt as heavy as an anvil. The dust was their grub stake, and he had no intention of losing it to some rascal along the way. So he's put all of the gold dust in the tips of his glove. We ought to carry a gun, Praiseworthy, a 4-shooter. There is no time for that now, Master Jack. They were the last passengers to board the stagecoach. They had hardly taken their seats when the driver, a bandy-legged man in old buckskin, snapped his whip. The horses bolted, and they were off to the diggings. Jack was squeezed in beside Praiseworthy and a red-faced man wearing a string tie. He was quick to introduce himself as an undertaker. Fletcher's the name, gentlemen. Jones T. Fletcher, of Hangtown. I don't mind telling you that business is brisk in my line of work up there in the diggings. Glad to meet you. Yes, sir, socially or professionally, as the case may be. In the seat opposite sat 2 Frenchmen in brand-new jackboots and checked shirts with the creases still in them. Between them, opposite Jack, so that their knees almost touched, sat a man in dusty linen suit and his hat pulled down over his face. He had been sleeping that way from the moment Praiseworthy and Jack had entered the coach. Don't see how a man can sleep on this road, Jones T. Fletcher laughed. Maybe he's dead. Ain't that a fine-looking jibba-jabba hat he's got? Must have bought that in Panama. I come across the plains myself, clear from Missouri. Jones D. Fletcher droned on. The team of horses raised red clouds of dust, and Jack watched the passing sights as best he could. They overtook ox-drawn wagons loaded with stores for the mines and strings of pack mules. The men in the fine straw jibba-jabba hats slept on. A large ruby ring glistened from his finger. With the jostling of the stage, his coat fell open, and Jack could see the butt of a dueling pistol tucked inside his belt. It was almost an hour before he awoke. His hand rested on the pistol, and he tipped the hat back off his face. He looked straight into Jack's eyes with the faintest of smiles, as if he hadn't been sleeping at all. Jack nearly jumped. It was Mr. Cut-Eye Higgins. Remember, Cut-Eye's the guy who stole the map on the boat. Chapter 10, The Rogue Outrogued. Praiseworthy remained remarkably calm. He didn't so much as raise an eyebrow, but he did give Jack a faint poke in the ribs with his elbow as if to say, Easy, Master Jack, easy. Leave the scoundrel to me. Small world, ain't it? Grinned Cut-Eye Higgins. His hand remained at rest in silent warning on the butt of his pistol. I hadn't noticed until today, said Praiseworthy. If I didn't know better, I'd think you were still in Rio. The villain's scarred eye was set at a squint. Rio was too hot for me, you might say, so I lit out for Panama, crossed the isthmus by bongo boat and muleback. A whole parade of folks is getting to the Pacific that way, and looks like I beat you to California at that. I dare say you had a good map to guide you. Remember, he's the one who stole the map. The man in the jibba-jabba hat bared his yellow teeth in a laugh. A map? A map? Why, what map is that? Praiseworthy narrowed his glance. I bring you regards from the good Dr. Buckabee. Well, now ain't that neighborly of you? The stage charged across the valley flats, and the Frenchmen shook handkerchiefs in front of their noses to keep the dust away. Jones T. Fletcher kept shooting tobacco juice out of the window as if the ground were on fire. Jack's hand fell to the horn spoon in his belt. He could almost imagine it was a four-shooter. That would make Mr. Cut-Eye Higgins sit up and take notice. Why, he'd begged to hand over Dr. Buckabee's gold map. The dueling pistol in his belt would be no match for a four-shooter. But Praiseworthy didn't seem in the least concerned about the lack of firearms. Have you met Mr. Fletcher? He said, tugging at his left glove. He tells us he's an undertaker. A man in your line of work, sir, never knows when he'll need the services of a good undertaker. An undertaker is a person who buries bodies after the people have passed away. I didn't get the name, said the Missourian. Higgins. Cut-Eye grinned. Doc Higgins, dentist. Well now, smiled the undertaker, the boys will be glad to have a tooth extractor in camp. Praiseworthy winked at Jack. The impostor had apparently given up his judgeship. A dentist, was he? Specializing in extracting gold teeth, no doubt. And now if you gentlemen will excuse me, said the butler, I believe I'll catch a nap. Sleep? Jack thought. How could anyone sleep with Mr. Cut-Eye Higgins sitting here? But before the stage had traveled another quarter of a mile, Praiseworthy was napping soundly. Jack sat gazing at the villain, their knees almost touching, and the man in the jibba-jabba hat gazed back at him. By late afternoon they had reached the brown foothills, and the stage pulled up at a relay station for a change of horses. With the mountains rising at their shoulders, Praiseworthy and Jack stood at the well, refreshing themselves with dippers of cool water. The four-horse team was being replaced with a team of 6 for the hard climb ahead. Do you think he's got Dr. Buckabee's map with him? Jack whispered. No doubt about it, said Praiseworthy. I'll wager he doesn't take his hand off that dueling pistol even when he sleeps. We'll need a shotgun to get the map away from him. A four-shooter at least. Lacking one and the other, said the butler, we'll have to rely on our wits, Master Jack. I have no intention of allowing Dr. Buckabee to be cheated of his map. Soon they were under way again. The narrow road climbed sharply. Oak trees gave way to shadow-darkened pines. The sun was setting across the valley as if to desert them, and the driver's whip cracked in the air like rifle shots. Inside the wooden coach the passengers sat knee to knee, as before, and held on against the bumps and ruts of the road. Finally the stage rounded a bend, and the trail seemed to shoot up like a ladder. Everybody out, shouted the driver. Push, gents, push. Cut-Eye Higgins didn't take his hand off the pistol butt for a moment. He pushed with one hand. Slowly the stagecoach, piled high on top with luggage and supplies, climbed the road. The driver urged the team on with his whip. Keep at it, gents. We're gaining. Jack put his shoulder to the coach like the others and dug his shoes in the dirt. Halfway up the hill, it seemed to him, the driver must have 6 whips in his hands for all the noise he was making. Suddenly a window shattered and then another, and just as suddenly Jack became aware that it wasn't only the crack of the whip in the air. Gunshots! Road agents! The driver yelled. He set the brake and reached for his rifle. Hold up! Praiseworthy pushed Jack under the coach. Jones T. Fletcher had beat him there. Through the spokes of the big wheels Jack saw a dozen horsemen with red bandanas around their face charge out of the pines. Cut-Eye Higgins drew his dueling pistol and fired. He missed. He didn't have a chance to reload. The road agents had them surrounded, their guns and rifles bristling in the twilight. The leader, a big fellow with holes in his boots, called to the driver, Throw down your rifle. The rest of you reach for the sky or I'll send you there pronto. Jack swallowed hard and came out in the open. Praiseworthy gave him a reassuring glance and didn't seem scared at all. They raised their hands. Cut-Eye Higgins growled to himself, but his arms shot up like the others. Sorry to interrupt your journey, said the leader. We'll only detain you a moment. Boys, hop to it. Two of the outlaws climbed to the top of the stage and threw down the trunks and boxes and carpet bags. Others broke them open to paw through the contents for valuables. Meanwhile, another pair of road agents made quick work of the passengers. They pulled watches and chains off vests and tugged buckskin pouches of gold dust from pockets and belts. Jack tried not to look at Praiseworthy's white gloves. The outlaws would never think of looking there, would they? All right, gents, said one of the gang through the bandana across his mouth. Now lower your hands one by one and let's have your rings. He started with the Frenchman and then came to Cut-Eye Higgins. He wore a gold ring set with a ruby, like a drop of blood. Stolen, no doubt, thought Jack. The rogue is being out-rogued, but it was a small comfort. Why, I wore this ring since I was a lad, said Cut-Eye Higgins. It won't come off. In that case, the outlaw said, we'll just have to chop off the finger. Cut-Eye Higgins removed the ring in an instant, and the highwayman roared. I don't have a ring, said Jack. I can see that boy. The road agent moved on to Praiseworthy. Well, look here, we got a regular gentleman with gloves on. Not a gentleman, corrected Praiseworthy, merely a butler. What's that? Never did hear of a butler. Jack's heart began to beat faster. Praiseworthy pulled off his right-hand glove. Their gold dust, their grubstake, would soon be exposed. But Praiseworthy seemed unconcerned as could be. How about the other hand? Growled the outlaw. Naturally, said Praiseworthy. He pulled the glove off each finger carefully but casually and held up his bare hand. The gold dust remained in the fingers of the glove. No rings, as you see. And the outlaw moved on. Ooh, looks like something's going to happen here, though. I might be running out of time. Praiseworthy gave Jack a wink without winking and very calmly pulled the gloves on again. But another big fellow was emptying Praiseworthy's carpet bag in the dirt. Shirt, cufflinks, hairbrush. Why, look here, the ruffian chuckled. A picture, a regular beauty, ain't she? Jack recognized the tiny type at once. It was his Aunt Arabella. He didn't know Praiseworthy had her picture along. When he glanced up, Praiseworthy had gotten white with anger. I'll thank you to return that picture to my bag, he warned, stamping each word out of the cold steel. You don't say. Why, I'll be proud to own a picture like this. I guess I'll just take it along. The rest happened so fast that Jack missed half of it. In the blink of an eye, Praiseworthy, in his fury, struck like a bolt of lightning, grabbing the ruffian to his feet by the shirt front. He slammed his left glove first into the man's bandana-covered face. The outlaw hurled back as if he'd been struck with a stick of cordwood, and he just lay there. Why, look at that, said the undertaker in awe. Knocked that big fella 15 feet uphill. If his fellow outlaws had held their fire, it was only because they were too startled by the butler's awesome left jab. They were like trees growing from the ground. They stood on, and then their leader seemed to grin behind his bandana. There's a picture of Praiseworthy knocking out the bandit. See, giving his left jab. All right, I'll have to read more tomorrow because I've run out of time. We'll finish chapter 10 tomorrow. Have a good day.